Hi, thanks for joining. I'm Elvia Limón. I am the engagement producer here, and I just want to welcome everyone to another episode of our Instagram live series where we look at the Texas Legislature. In our last episode, we talked with education reporter Elvia about the pandemic's effect on schools, how the legislator plans to mitigate those effects, and the future of the historic 2019 school funding bill. If you missed that episode, or if you haven't been watching our other episodes, you can actually go back and watch them under our Instagram TV tab at the Texas Tribune account. Today we're going to discuss LGBTQ issues in front of the legislator, and I'm going to add the representative here. Hi.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you great. So I'm just describing to all of our people watching us what we're going to be talking about today. We'll be discussing LGBTQ issues in front of the legislature, the work of the LGBTQ Caucus, and the hopes to expand non-discrimination protections. But before I introduce you, I want to thank Lone Star College, Texas State Technical College, and Human Rights Campaign for supporting this episode. And now on to our special guest today. I'm joined today by State Representative Mary González. González has represented House District 75 since 2013. She serves as Vice Chair of the House Agriculture and Livestock Committee and sits on the Appropriations Committee. Representative González also chairs the House LGBTQ Caucus and serves as Secretary of the House Border Caucus and as Treasurer for the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. For everyone joining us today, if you have questions for the representative, you can use the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and you can ask us questions down there. So let's get started. Oh my God, I see your dog.
So I'm gonna confess, like normally I'd be like, go away, little dogs, but my poor dogs, I have to leave them behind when I go to Austin. So they're very so I'm just letting them be with me all the time right now because they have to spend so much time away from me when I'm back in the Capitol. So I hope everybody doesn't mind that my dogs are going to be part of the conversation today.
It's understandable. I mean, especially during a pandemic. I also have my cats just walking around, so you might see some cats as well.
Well, that I just think it's a great way for people to really see the real parts of us,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I guess I'll get started with our first question. Our first question is what type of protections do LGBTQ people in Texas already have against discrimination? I mean, and how many do we have?
Really very little protections, right? And I think that's part of the problem. We are really at the mercy when it comes to employment, jobs, healthcare access. In some ways, there's so many gaps that still exist for LGBTQ folks, like even in 2021, right? And so we're really lucky that the federal government has done a lot to include some protections, but Texas really needs to step up. And so that's one of the things we've been working on since the beginning of the caucus.
So what exactly are you focusing on this legislative session?
Sorry, my dog got my keys and I'm afraid he's gonna eat them.
Oh no.
One second. So sorry.
No, it's okay. Hopefully he doesn't eat them.
He eats everything.
Oh God. So
sorry. Okay, everyone. So sorry. So what are we working on? Number one is the caucus has three goals. First and foremost, it is to be at the table during legislative session, to show that LGBTQ folks are part of the legislative process. So we have bills that are affirming to our community that we are trying to work through. So the comprehensive LGBTQ anti-discrimination bill, which Representative Vice Chair Jessica González has, to banning conversion therapy that Representative Celia Israel has, to LGBT youth work that I'm doing and Aaron Zwiener is doing. And so everyone has a little piece of the pie to think about collective protections. At the same time, we're also working to make sure bad bills don't make it through the process. And so we have like a two-prong approach to the work that we're doing in the building. The second thing we're doing is making sure we're connecting with grassroots leaders all over the state. So we have town halls, we have email blasts, we do all that work. And the last thing we're doing is creating a pipeline for LGBT youth to be involved in the political process through our internship program and through some of these things like today.
So I'm going to go back to the first question because we actually have a question from a viewer right now, Dover Dell. He wanted to know a little bit more about, why don't LGBTQ Texans have a lot of protections here? Why is that? I know it could be a long explanation, but
I mean, the truth is because we just haven't passed that legislation, and it hasn't been passed for a variety of reasons. Everything stemming from primary elections to priorities in the legislature. And so even though I will say this, we haven't advanced as far as we need to, we've done a lot of great work, and I'm really positive. I mean, but people don't realize in 2012, when I first got elected, and I was the first LGBTQ woman, marriage equality was not even a thing yet, right? We've had so much from one person or two. Glenn Maxey was first, then me, to now having a caucus, to now having multiple legislators, to now advancing and humanizing the issues in which we're dealing with.
So yeah, you mentioned something very important, which is just how things have changed within the past decade even. And one of the things that happened recently is that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that federal civil rights law prevents employment discrimination based on sexual orientation or gender identity. This happened in the summer, I believe in June. So if we have that ruling, why is it so important to also have a statewide non-discrimination law?
I mean, because if we believe that discrimination shouldn't happen, we can't just have rulings in the courts. We should have laws to support that reality, A. B, I mean, it's kind of like a belt and suspenders thing, because courts can always change rules. And so our humanity or our access to equal rights shouldn't be determined by just a couple of court cases. It really should be in statute. And so there's a basic understanding of the rules and laws that we have in the state.
So if we do have those laws, I mean, how would that impact Texas economically? What are some of the things that would come out of having that type of law in place?
Equality Texas and the LGBTQ Caucus joined together during the interim to do town halls all over the state to talk about the economic benefits and economic competitiveness of Texas should we pass comprehensive non-discrimination. National and or global companies have very strict policies when it comes to where they will go as far as inclusion of their folks. And so without us doing a non-discrimination legislation, we really do lose out on some businesses coming to Texas. We know that not only in the business sector, but also if we think about higher ed, right? Professors, researchers, leading researchers who are doing some amazing work may not come to Texas if they feel them or their spouses or partners may not have protections, or their children may not have protections. And so really the domino effect of passing non-discrimination legislation is critical across the board, whether it's in the business world, whether it's in the education world, and also it's just the right thing to do. So
during the efforts that you're putting, you face a difficult challenge because in the House and in the Senate, because it's and the governor's office too, because they're still controlled by Republicans who have traditionally opposed a measure like this, measures that we've just talked about. So how do you make your case to your colleagues across the aisle?
So I think first and foremost, it's really about humanizing our experiences and who we are as people, right? So saying nobody should be discriminated against. In order for that to be a reality, we have to put it in statute. And I think that has really moved the bar. Well, you're right. There are lots of barriers for us passing this piece of legislation. We've also seen a growing trend of people being supportive on the Republican side. Being non-discriminatory is not a partisan issue, right? We just have to make sure we help people understand what that really means. I think sometimes there's a lot of misinformation about what a non-discrimination piece of legislation would look like. And so we are really working hard to help people understand our stories, our communities, our people, and the long-term impact for Texas and the benefits of that.
So you recently, just a little bit ago, talked about the different things that the LGBTQ caucus is doing. So can you elaborate a little bit about what the caucus is hoping to achieve during this legislative session, aside from, bringing more education and hoping to pass these laws in the legislature?
Definitely. So we believe in a coalitional agenda. So we are working and always supporting the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, the Black Caucus, and really all the work of the legislature to do this work in an intersectional way, first and foremost. We are also trying to make sure bad bills don't pass. As we know, there's been a record number of anti-LGBT bills specifically targeting our trans family. And so we are really working hard to make sure that those pieces of legislation don't make it through the process. And then we're also trying to make sure that people have access to what's happening at the Capitol. So for example, because of COVID-19, a lot of people may not feel it's safe to come to the Capitol or maybe hesitant to come to the Capitol. So we're doing a lot more outreach to the organizations on the ground and to the people who want to be involved in the process.
So we actually had one of our readers, because you discussed making sure that certain laws don't pass. So are there any laws currently on the books that the caucus is trying to get rid of this session?
I'll give an example of one of the laws that's in the books right now that I'm trying to get rid of. So I'll give it, we call it our Lovebirds bill. Right now, teens who are in relationships, let's say 15 and 18, that would be considered a legal relationship, right? Based because that 18-year-old is already an adult. Well, there's an affirmative defense for that relationship if it's consensual, and of course, if it's consensual, but also only if it's between a boy and a girl. That does not apply across genders. And so we want to make sure that it's not gender specific and it could apply to all LGBT youth, because youth shouldn't be criminalized for their relationships. And even though, and this is a great example, there's a court case that says that technically this isn't allowed, the statute shouldn't be in place. We want to clean the statute so there aren't any questions.
And so it's been a few years since you helped form the Texas House LGBTQ Caucus. Like you mentioned, you were one of the first in the legislature. So for readers who may be a little bit new to legislative sessions and just the latest, just all of the news involving
that is going on.
Yeah, everything. Can you explain why the caucus is important and how you came to create it and why it matters in the legislature?
Oh, it matters so much. It institutionalizes our seat at the table. So when there are leadership meetings, you'll have leaders from all the different caucuses, from the Republican caucus, Dem caucus, Black caucus, Mexican American Legislative Caucus, and now we have a formalized seat at the table. I think the other thing it really does is make sure we're not increasing our invisibility, right? That we are here, we're part of the process, and it creates an opportunity for our allies to be engaged in our issues. So while we have 6 LGBTQ legislators right now, there are over 48 members of our caucus. So that means that there are allies who are really excited to be part of the strategy and thoughtful work that we're doing when it comes to LGBTQ issues.
That's great. We do have
it's really exciting and it's groundbreaking and I love it. I'm like, having this caucus, I think really, I hope, creates a lot of hope and momentum specifically for LGBT youth.
So what can you give us a little bit of just some examples of what you've seen the caucus already do in past legislative sessions that you have been excited to talk about?
I mean, I'll give an example. Last session, the LGBTQ caucus brought in some youth who were interested in politics for internships, and then we still have the internship program right now. And now some of our interns from the first session are now working at the Capitol right now, right? And so we're creating those pipelines that will create long-term change, not only in laws, but in the culture as a whole within the Capitol.
I can hear your dog.
Sorry.
I know. He's excited that you're home. So did you just come home today, or have you been in Austin?
I got home midnight last night, and so it's like, and I haven't been home. I left I'm vice chair of appropriations, and it's another fun fact on appropriations are Aaron Zwiener, Ann Johnson, myself, and Julie Johnson. That's 4 of the 6 out LGBT members are on appropriations, so it's really exciting. But because we had Rider Day on Monday, I had to come in Saturday night, and so they haven't seen me in a long time. So yes,
they're excited. They're like, "You please stay. Don't go back." I do have another reader question. Do you know by any chance if lawmakers are working on anything related to the process of changing name and gender markers on state IDs? Do you know if that's something that any lawmakers working on during this session?
I know that there's over 30 pro LGBTQ bills. I know there's a component of that. I don't want to give wrong information, so I'm sure somebody in my staff is probably watching, and maybe you could add something in the chat to help you find the bill numbers that you're asking for.
Cool. And so, I mean, for anyone who wants to get involved in the legislative process, who might be new or doesn't know where to start, how can Texans who are interested in this topic get involved and get their voice heard?
So lots of ways, and now because of COVID, there have been new ways to get involved, like testimony through Zoom and things like that. So here's what I would say. I always recommend to folks if you want to get more involved in LGBTQ issues, follow us on Facebook, on Insta, and on Twitter, because we're putting updates all the times about bills that are moving, bills that we're worried about, bills that we're excited about. So that's a great way just to get really quick information. The second thing I would say is feel free to reach out to any of our offices. We want people to be engaged. We have a staff. Like, you may not always get the members, right? Because we're all over the place. It's like I always talk about, like herding feral cats. But you might get our staff, which honestly, our staff are rock stars. And so please just feel free to reach out. I've never heard a member of the legislature, specifically those in our caucus, say, "Oh, I don't want to hear from people about this." Everybody really wants to hear from people. So I would encourage people to reach out. And I saw in the chat that someone's asking, where do we apply? So right now, if you want to apply we aren't accepting applications at this moment because session's already started, but we will for the summer and for the fall. Please feel free to reach out to my office and talk to Ryan in my office, who is our deputy director for the LGBTQ Caucus, and you can just find that all online.
And that's applying for the internships, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that, we're out of time, but I want to thank everyone who's been watching us. Thank you for tuning in. And I want to thank you, Representative Mary González, for talking to us and giving us this great information. And for more coverage and get the latest and most important news of everything that's going on in the legislature, make sure to go to texastribune.org. And thank you, everyone. And we'll see you back in 2 weeks.
Can I give a quick shout out?
Yes.
I see Congressman VC's watching.
How
cool is that? Oh my God, Congressman, you're a rock star. I'm saying hi to you. Okay, bye y'all.
Bye, thank you for joining.